Greetings shippers, welcome back, and it's time for another Fic Rec Friday, and this week, it's Dark Rec Week. You knew it was coming, and now it is here, the Dark Recs.
You merely adopted the dark fic. I was born reading. I didn't read a regular fic until I was already a man.
So because we're going to be diving into some controversial territory, let's do an intro. Yes, we're gonna have to do an explanation style intro. So if you already live in the dark and you just want to get to the fics, I will put a timestamp on the screen and you can skip right there. Look, a timestamp. I'm a real YouTuber now. Okay, so dark fics. Dark fics are a contentious sticking point for certain readers. But before we dive into why that is, and also some of their merits and some of the concerns, let's talk about what exactly is a dark fic, because there are some who can't agree on that point. So there are many ways that a fic can be dark. A fic can be dark because of the theme. Now that can be a theme of the work itself, or of the source material. So it's coming from a horror movie, or just something that dealt with a lot of psychologically dark, or even viscerally physically dark elements. A fic can also be dark because of the topic, from murder, torture, rape, eating disorders, self-harm, dubcon, ABO, mpreg. Many of these are considered dark, and the range very much varies. Some are quite firmly rooted in the dark, and others less so. It depends upon how they are applied. A fic can also be dark because of the pairing, be that an incestuous pairing, a pairing with a large age gap, a pairing wherein certain shippers feel that there are certain abusive undertones. Now here it must be noted that mileage can vary upon what a certain reader will think is dark, for every reader has different thresholds as to what they consider to be dark. A good example of this is, say, Raylo. Certain fans feel that this ship is inherently abusive, while others do not. There are multiple reads, and the same can be said for the topics. Some feel a fic is dark if it introduces mature content into a fandom that is not inherently so a fandom ostensibly aimed at a younger demographic. There are also certain dark fics that are not purely dark, but work in certain dark elements for a moment, and then proceed to go through them and become a more fluffy fic, a fusion of the fic types as it were. So with all of that being said, what exactly is the contention with dark fics? Well, as one can imagine based on some of the topics we have already laid out, they can make some quite uncomfortable, viscerally so, and also, depending upon the reader, be triggering. And most things that can be applied to a reader can also be applied to a writer or other type of fan creator. Now, it must be noted that at the time of this recording, most archives have intricate tagging systems that at the very least will allow the user to give warnings or disclaimers before their fics to let people know what exactly they are getting in for. Hence, if it is something that the reader does not think they will be able to handle or appreciate, or is simply not in the mood for at that current moment, they can head on out and check out something else. However, there are some who feel that these fics should not exist at all. It is here that the most intense of the debates occur, for many feel that as much as some of these fics may squick people out, they deserve to exist, and they need a place to be housed, and that these many archives are the perfect occasion to do so, especially because readers have the option to opt out should they so choose. These readers and writers would equate it to the likes of a library, which houses many different types of books, works, films, etc. Not all will be appreciated by those who enter, but they do appreciate having a place to go and peruse. Now that is of course not to dismiss those who have concerns, as there are indeed some works where it appears that something may be going on that needs to be discussed or reported, which is why most sites have those mechanisms in place. However, many sites also do not mass delete upon receiving requests to, and the reason resides in fandom's history, as well as the history of the internet in general, and evolving feelings and discussions about it being a free and open space. Fics indeed having already gone through purges when it was very easy for people to mass flag fics, similar to how they can mass flag videos on YouTube. The reason lies in what we will discuss next. Now, while the concerns of those who side-eye dark fics are also to be addressed, we must also take a look at the validity of dark fics and what they can offer, and how that is often overlooked. This video will focus on that angle, as it is usually quite easy to find the opposite point of view, but counterpoints will still be addressed. When people malign dark fics as a whole, they often do so as just that, as a whole, taking the topic and throwing out every single fic under that banner, and also assuming the mindset of the writers, thinking them to be exploitative, cruel, sadistic, or out to harm, when in reality, that is not often the case. This is because of the different ways that people who appreciate dark fics view their value. So let us take a look at the dark fic as an outlet. For many readers and writers, the dark fic can be an outlet for many things. For some, it can be an outlet to work through whatever the topic or theme is that they are directly exploring in that work. It can also be a more general outlet for anger or some kind of negative feelings that one needs a place to work through and explore. Paradoxically, it can also be a place where people seek out comfort. It can also be a more academic space to take a look at the dark side of humanity, especially exploring the corners of worlds wherein a lot of these themes cannot be discussed for many reasons: ratings, general taste, and a host of others. Many feel that these things need to be discussed and not buried, and even if that is uncomfortable, that does not mean that these issues and topics do not deserve to be explored. There are also those who feel that fiction is fiction, not in the sense that it can never represent reality or have an impact upon it, but in the sense that it is important to always maintain that level of separation between the two, particularly when it comes to authors of work and readers of work, as some feel there is room for exploitation and fun, even within the darker realms of fiction, and that enjoyment need not necessarily mean that one condones the actions that are taking place, as there are many different forms of enjoyment one can get out of a work. And as a result of all of this, there have been occasions wherein dark fics have been policed, and the people who end up being shut down or bullied off of a platform or forced to remove their work out of shame actually ended up being part of the demographic that the people who were critiquing them were trying to protect. This occurs a lot with self-harm fics, abuse fics, and non-con. Again, this is not to discourage or discredit anyone who has a problem with these types of fics. It is simply as always a plea for discussion, understanding, and consideration on all sides. For authors of such works must also make sure to tag correctly, and be mindful of the types of reactions that their works may elicit. Of course, the same does not go for harassment. Dark fics, like fluff fics, crack, and other types of fiction, are not all good or all bad. Some have merit, and some are exploitative, and some are flat out bad. My ultimate hope, as always with these intros, is to spark a genuine discussion about the dark fic, and the merits of fic in general, including the dark underbelly. So whatever one feels about dark fics in general, please feel free to leave it down below. This is a space for all kinds of discussion. However, it must be reiterated, it is not a bashing space, and especially in the case of the fics we are going to discuss here. If this sounds like it is not for you at all and that it is going to bother you or potentially you will be triggered, then perhaps it would be best to check out one of our previous Fic Rec Fridays or come back next week. I will of course be issuing the relevant trigger warnings for the fics in general, but just know that they will all be dark. So if you're interested in checking out these fics, then stay tuned, and also if you're interested in seeing what exactly some people get out of these themes, then also stay tuned, because there's going to be a brief explanation about each type of dark fic as we get to it, because I tried to pick a variety of dark fics, because dark fics are not ubiquitous. There are many different types, as varied as there are light fics. As always, before we get started, if you haven't already, please do follow on social media to stay up to date, and also to just come over and chit chat about fandom. It's a good time, I swear. Also, as always, thank you for all the recs, which I always check out down below. I really appreciate them. And one last time before we get started, warning, if it is not for you, it's time to get out now, and also that all types of fics are welcome here. This is a welcoming fandom space, and we're going to explore all that fandom has to offer. All of it. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to be critical of it too. So with all of that said, let's get to the first fic. The first fic is going to take us over to a gaming fandom, to a game that we streamed all of on this channel, Dream Daddy. Now, Dream Daddy has its share of dark fics that tend to fall into a parallel universe because of the cult ending, which, while not a part of the game at the time of this recording, was something that people could access and see, and so were aware of, and it became a bit of meta extra fan lore. This fic does deal with two of the players in that arc, but keeps them within the setting of the game. We're talking about Mary and Joseph Christensen. It is clear while playing through the game that these two have a troubled marriage, and that there are certain elements that seem to lend themselves to the fact that this is an unhealthy, potentially abusive relationship. Now, people like to read this a variety of ways. Some of them like to blame it all on one party. Some people like to work towards a reconciliation, or finding a way that the two can separate amicably. However, others use this as an opportunity to explore the downfall of a marriage and how one can find themselves trapped in such a situation. Trigger warnings for this fic would be emotional abuse. This fic would fall under the realm of thematically dark, and an extrapolation of canon elements, which, while present, are not fully explored, because that is not the game's focus. The game very much lays down breadcrumbs of backstories that the characters have, and your character, the Dadsona, glimpses them, but isn't able to fully interact with them, which is where these fics come in. This fic is called Silver Bells and Cockle Shells by Awkward Potato Child. One chapter, word count 7,869. This fic takes place pre-canon, leading up to just when your protagonist, the Dadsona, arrives in the town. It deals with Mary's past and how exactly she came to be with Joseph, and how she fell into an emotionally abusive relationship without even realizing it was happening. This fic has a very realistic portrayal of how easy it is to fall in with a person who isn't good for you, and who is actively gaslighting you. These fics can have a lot of merit because they can explore elements of relationships that aren't often spotlighted. When it comes to depictions of abusive relationships, it is much more common to come across depictions of physical abuse because they are easier to illustrate. Emotional abuse can be much more subtle, and that doesn't always play out as well when it comes to media representation because it's not big and bombastic, and hence viewers or readers can miss it. These fics can be helpful for those who want to examine relationships from many viewpoints, those who may be in one of these relationships themselves and looking for support, or simply those who want to explore this part of the canon. It is very well written, and the relationship's descent feels organic. You feel for the characters, particularly Mary and Robert. It's also great for those who are not a fan of Joseph and feel that he was manipulative and playing everybody the whole time, which is not a read that everybody has for Joseph. So if that's not your favorite Joseph, this might not be a fic for you. This fic also plays with the headcanon that originated on Tumblr that Mary and Damien are siblings. So if you're interested in checking that out, this fic has that as well. Now, some of you might be saying, that wasn't that dark. I thought you said you were bringing the darkness. We're easing into it.
Actually, the easing stops now.
Because two is gonna test how far into the dark you can go. We're hopping over to the Jessica Jones fandom. This fic is going to deal with both dark themes and a dark ship. Trigger warnings for this. For many of this fandom, they simply use the tag Kilgrave is a walking trigger. But to be more specific, we're going to be dealing with dubcon, past non-con, alcoholism, and just the general unsettlingness of the concept for many. Jessica Jones as a whole, based on the comic Alias, which also covers many of the same themes, deals with a lot of very triggering material for a lot of people. Abuse, sexual assault, PTSD, it has all of that going on. The series deals a lot with survivor recovery and coming out of being in such a horrible relationship against one's will. So it can be shocking for some to discover that there is a ship of Jessica Jones and Kilgrave. Now, some are so put off that they don't look into it any further, which can lead to them missing out on some very interesting fics because there is a lot of intriguing work being done within this pairing. This pairing is dark, and those who deal in fics and works for it are well aware of this fact. And most are very careful to pepper their works with disclaimers and warnings. So what exactly can you expect if you dive into this corner of the fandom? A lot of it is extrapolations of Jessica's time with Kilgrave pre-series. What was her thought process? What was it like? Just people working through those feelings. There are some intriguing works of people looking at it from the outside and not recognizing that anything is wrong. There are also fics from Kilgrave's point of view, just about how deluded and twisted he is as to what their relationship is. So there's a lot to unpack here. There are some who are working through their own experiences in these stories, using the characters of Jessica Jones and Kilgrave as outlets. There are also those who are exploring the dark side of villainy, because Jessica Jones allows for its villain to be nuanced, which is something that not everybody was a fan of. However, there are others who will acknowledge that just because the character is nuanced does not dismiss
Any of the terrible things he has done.
Some feel that this makes the series stronger, because it acknowledges that evil is not always ugly or uncharismatic, and can sometimes come in a very appealing package, which is part of the reason why so many dismiss this pairing out of hand. The actor casting. It is no secret that David Tennant is a very popular actor, and a fan favorite for many, and that many deem him to be quite attractive. So some feel that this ship is only arising out of the attractiveness of the participants. Now for some, that may be the case, and the attractiveness certainly does not hurt. But that can be said for most of fandom, as attractiveness of characters plays a factor in many ships, not just dark ones. So where exactly does our fic lie? Well, this fic is dark because it deals with an element that many are not willing to explore when it comes to this pairing. For those who dive in, some are willing to dwell in the darkness and the acknowledgement that this relationship is awful for all concerned, just to work through those dark patches. However, there are some who are interested in redemption. This is a dark fix-it, in a way, as close to a fix-it as one could get for this pairing.
This fic occurs during/after episode 8.
Wherein canonically, if anything was going to happen between these two, it would have occurred at this period. This is the episode wherein Kilgrave proposes to Jessica that the two could be a hero duo. They could team up, and she could help him keep his bad side in check, and that together, they could be good people. This is a fic exploring what would happen if she had taken him up on that offer, and how exactly their relationship would change over that 6 months. This fic is called Love in a Trash Can by Good Boots. It is part 1 of the 2-part series On the Run. This part is 1 chapter, word count 10,957. This fic is a very good exploration of 2 characters falling back into patterns and routines and yet growing and moving forward. It deals with a dark-edged kind of forgiveness that, while not kind and potentially not the best for either character, feels genuine and like something that could occur. It's a very clever and intricately woven fic in that it works. It sounds like a concept that shouldn't work, and yet it does. This type of fic is appealing for those who are entering a dark fandom and wish to inject some kind of hope into it.
Or even lightheartedness or fluff.
This is often met with backlash because there are certain situations that simply make one's skin crawl, and they don't want to explore any kind of redemption arc and instead want to deal with a more cathartic ending, such as the one that Jessica Jones actually gave, which falls very much more under the revenge fantasy genre, which is completely understandable given the themes. However, there are some who want to dwell here. Some just because they're fluff suckers and they can't help themselves, and others because perhaps they have gone down this route of forgiveness. That is one that is often very judged because it is not socially accepted and not something that people are able to talk about, which can again be the appeal of the dark fic. It can be a space where people can find a way to articulate ideas and concepts that aren't able to be talked about out loud because they go against the dominant or correct narrative. Now, that doesn't make them right, but it does make them more understandable.
More understandable for some than yet another way to interpret this, which is as a dark fantasy.
So, if that sounds like something that you're intrigued by, please check it out. And as reiterated, no bashing to the author. They have been quite adamant about making sure that they have the proper tags and everything in place. Since it is my way, I will also tell you about part 2, which, this one's pure fluff. So if you couldn't handle quasi-realistic fluff, you're not gonna want pure fluff, but I'm gonna tell you about it anyway.
This fic is called On the Road Till the End of Time. 1 chapter, word count 4,685. It deals with Jessica suddenly realizing that through proximity to Kilgrave, she has developed his powers, and that she can use it not only on others, but on him as well. This continues the two's adventures as a superhero team, and despite being a fluffier iteration than the first part, they are still in character. So yes, it's still dark.
If you're still with me, part 3, and it gets darker still. Down the rabbit hole we go. Keep going. Are you still with me? Can you follow the white rabbit any further? We're gonna hop into a pretty obscure fandom for this one. We're gonna go and take a look at the movie Stoker. How to describe Stoker? Stoker was a 2013 psychological horror film that has some very neo-gothic vibes, and it deals quite heavily in incestuous themes and tones, as does this fic. Trigger warnings for this fic are, of course, incest. Yes. Murder as well,
and age gaps.
This fic is called We Don't Need to Be Friends by Miss M. 1 chapter, word count 3,125. This fic deals with the dark pairing of Charlie Stoker and his niece India. It deals particularly with her sadistic awakening. Spoilers for this film, for those who are still here. One of the things that occurs in this film is India's sexual awakening through discovering her arousal by murder. She is aroused by the killing of others, the death of things. And her uncle Charlie has a history of killing. In fact, he has a history of killing some of their own family members, including his own infant brother. This whole thing is dark, but it is Fascinatingly so, in the way of a V.C. Andrews novel, wherein everything is just so wrong that you just want to stick around to the end and find out what exactly is going on and why is it happening and why can't you stop watching it. I chose this fic as the incest pairing because the incest that it works through is partially canonical, which might make it more palatable for some, but most likely not, because incest fic is a hard no for many shippers, which is completely understandable, as the taboos are well ingrained and, frankly, there for a reason. These type of fics very much require that separation of reality and fiction, that one is one and the other is the other, and that what might be appropriate to explore within one is not appropriate within real life. For most, it is very important that this separation be maintained. For some, less so, and is there that those who are very critical of these type of pairings have cause for concern, as some feel that these fics might be attempting to normalize very, very harmful behavior, and some go so far as to say that they are attempting to groom people, or romanticize abusive habits. These discussions vary depending upon which fandom you're working in, because incest is no small part of fandoms.
It is not the largest taboo on display, but has taken root in some very prominent and popular fandoms, at the time of this recording at least.
It may surprise certain viewers to know that there are incest ships for Gravity Falls, Rick and Morty, Supernatural, and the list goes on. The explanations for all vary. Some say it is because there are no other characters who are worthy of pairing those particular characters with, and that they have the most significant relationships, which again, some will counter and say that that means that shippers are far too focused on sexualizing all aspects of relationships, which of course the back counter is that it's all in good fun, or potentially working through some of those dark elements depending upon the fandom.
As this is a theme where there is some contention as to whether or not it is inherently dark, some would say yes, others would say it depends upon how it is applied, as you will find all kinds of works underneath this tag.
This type of fic in this type of fandom is one where those type of discussions need not necessarily take place instead of the more generalized incest taboo one, because of the fact that the theme occurs canonically.
And people tend to grant more leeway to source material works or mainstream works when it comes to entering the darkness. That is not to say they are not critiqued, but they are less likely to encounter the argument that they should never have been made.
Although, as one can imagine, because of how distasteful all of the themes at play are to many people, this is a very small fandom. Now, again, it is important to have these discussions, and I know that I'm taking a risk by including this fic, as it is not uncommon for people to simply flag anything that has these themes within it. However, if we are going to discuss dark fic, I felt it was important to truly put representations of dark fic, not to skirt around what exists out there in the fandom. We're going to ease it back and hop into another area for fic 4. We're going to leave sex and relationships behind as the cause of the triggers, and we're going to hop into another sort of psychological area. And we're going to hop over to the Harry Potter fandom. I'm sure some of you are sad that is happening in Dark Fic Week. It's going to be a dreary fic as well. Trigger warnings for this work include eating disorders, dark thoughts, and dealing with mental issues. This fic is called A Week of Somewhat Forced but Not Completely Unpleasant Dinner Dates with Harry Potter,
a story by Draco Malfoy.
By Queen of Time. Aside from being a fantastic BoJack Horseman style title, this is a very solid fic. The concept is that Draco Malfoy has an eating disorder, and he's not dealing with it. He's not handling it. In fact, he is on the verge of needing to be hospitalized, and the only way that he can get out of it is if he can set up a steady dinner date with somebody once a week to monitor that he is indeed eating. Through a set of circumstances, that person ends up being Harry Potter. So this fic is a twofold fic. It is dealing with Draco's past, his eating disorder, and getting together with Harry Potter. Now, these fics can be quite triggering for some people, and it can be uncomfortable for others to see eating disorders worked through in oftentimes very graphic ways, not in the fact that the descriptions are particularly visceral, but in the fact that Thematically and the way that they are explored, it is quite clear that many authors have a very firm grasp on what they are talking about, as these fics can be ways for people to reconcile and work through their own eating disorders, or also to potentially hopefully provide a helpful space for those who are going through it on their own. It can also be a place where people seek out hope or fantasize about having someone to go through it with, someone to help them, someone who loves them, as many eating disorder fics culminate in being either pairing or friendship fics.
Though another direction is also possible, focusing on loneliness and isolation.
These fics can also be encouraging for certain readers, as it makes it so that the characters are more than just their eating disorder. It may be part of who they are, but it is not all of who they are, especially as demonstrated in this fic. As yes, Draco Malfoy is suffering from an eating disorder, but he is working hard to overcome it, and it is not the only part of his personality. There is much more there. He is still a person with an eating disorder, but still a person. Some worry that by existing, these portrayals romanticize eating disorders, and it must be noted that there are some corners of the internet that do try and do just that. However, it is usually quite clear when one is reading a fic when it is trying to work through it versus romanticize it. And at that point is very much where the reporting system and stuff comes in. Not simply for the safety of others, but potentially for the safety of the person who wrote it, who may indeed be going through something. Harry Potter is a realm that plays host to many dark fics, because so many fans identified with the characters and felt that they could project many real-world scenarios onto them, which is why a great deal of Harry Potter fics don't actually have to do with a lot of Harry Potter lore, and instead have to do with extrapolated situations like this one, although oftentimes admittedly not dark.
This can be helpful by placing the scenario upon characters with which the author or reader already identifies.
Which takes us over to 5, where we're going to stick along the same theme of psychologically dark and hop over to something that can be very triggering for some. So, before I even get started on what fandom this is or anything, trigger warning for self-harm. There are a great many self-harm fics out there on the internet. In fact, if one does a search just for the tag, you may be shocked to see how many self-harm fics there are. And if one goes in to explore the tag, you might be surprised as to what exactly makes them up. A great many self-harm fics are reader inserts, wherein the reader is comforted by their favorite fictional character. Oftentimes the scenario being that Castiel comes upon one as they are self-harming, or Dean, or Loki, or whoever the writer or reader might identify with. These fics can oftentimes very much be about reaching out and feeling that support, a support that many might feel is lacking in their day-to-day lives. These same feelings can also be worked through by completely fictionalizing the parties, and they can be friendship fics or pairing fics, wherein one is looking out for the other on danger nights, or nights or days where it is more likely that the person is likely to self-harm. This fic is one of those, and it takes us over to the Sherlock fandom, and actually to a pairing that I often lightly rib on this channel, Mystrade, pairing of Mycroft and Inspector Greg, because I can never pronounce his name right, because both pronunciations keep happening, and it's just one of those names that I will never pronounce right ever. This fic is called Coeur De Lion. One chapter, word count 956. It is actually an orphan account. On AO3, Archive of Our Own, it is possible to orphan an account or a fic, meaning that one can make one's account anonymous but still leave the fic up. This can occur for many reasons. Perhaps one simply wants to get out of fandom, or they don't want to be associated with that specific fic, or they've been bullied off. There are many reasons, but this allows the author to leave the work up while disassociating themselves from it. It can also be a way to post anonymously if one is not exactly comfortable with receiving feedback or what one might say if they are discovered. This fic deals with a Mycroft who self-harms, as it is believed by many that the Holmes brothers do not have healthy coping mechanisms at all, and that Mycrofts might also be self-destructive, but that he may not have people to lean on, except for, in this case, Greg. This fic, like many of its ilk, deals with being a support person for someone who is going through a dark time. These can be quite triggering for some, as it can deal with the feelings and the stresses that lead up to one wanting to self-harm. They can also sometimes be ways to deal with people who are not supportive, and explore what that does to the person who feels that way. This is not one of those fics, as it deals with having someone there for you to get you through dark times. These fics can be quite cathartic, and while some argue that they should not exist, many for the same reason as the eating disorder fics, Others argue that it is important to discuss these things as there is so much stigma on them, and that many feel afraid to come out about these issues because they fear they will be judged. And that fiction, because of it, can end up feeling like a safe space, a haven to share thoughts that they cannot articulate out loud, which is why it can sometimes be so saddening when these fics or authors are attacked. As is mentioned in the intro, this can end up being attacking the very people that one is trying to defend. So as always, it is very important not to assume an author's intent, but if one has questions, then perhaps just to ask them, as most authors are more than happy to talk about their work, especially if approached respectfully. Well, that's it from my recs for this week, but I do of course have a fan rec, because some of you brave souls down there wreck dark fics, and I appreciate it and I save them. This one I'm going to take us over to a different type of fandom, where a dark fic is the norm, because the entire fandom is dark, canonically, and in its works. We're hopping over to the Hannibal fandom. This fic was recommended by Heather. Also, I see you, Heather. You comment all the time and I really appreciate it. Thank you. This fic is called What the Water Gave Me by Jessica. Chapter count 27, word count 59,569. And this is what Heather had to say about it.
In the summer of 2011, psychiatrist and FBI consultant Dr. Hannibal Lecter travels with a crack forensic team to the murder capital of America to assist the New Orleans field police in hunting a possible serial killer. But bodies aren't the most interesting thing he finds when the water starts to rise. This fic plays with the idea of what would happen if Will stayed in Louisiana and became a serial killer in his own right before he met Hannibal. This is a slow burn style fic and employs the underutilized tag, "Somebody help Hannibal." I like my Wills flirty and murderous. Curious cannibal noises.
So if you like dark murderous Will in lieu of innocent deer in the headlights coming into his own Will, this is definitely a fic for you. It doesn't fully reverse the dynamics, but it puts them on more of an equal footing, which they get to in the series, but it takes a while. And of course, Hannagram, Murder Husbands, which is a fan favorite, near canon, practically canon, it's just canon pairing for many people. This one can be an enjoyable dark fandom for some as well, as it is known to be dark. So getting into it, it is expected that the works will be dark and deal with all kinds of issues, murder, torture, and also a host of others, including some of the ones we've discussed in our earlier recs today. This is very much an outlet fandom for many, where they feel that they can just be themselves
And let loose.
when it comes to getting into all those dark themes. So, if you're still with me, I really want to thank you for that. I know that this is not a fun or pleasant topic for everyone to discuss, and that it can be very odd for some. Not everybody wants to dive into this corner of fandom. That is completely understandable. However, for those who do or who might want to in the future, it is there for you, and there is a lot to explore in it, and it's much more complex and nuanced than those who just dismiss it outright would have you believe. Honesty time. This was a video that I was quite nervous to film, because as one knows, people don't always react to these topics very well, especially at the time of this recording. However, I felt it was very important to showcase these elements. On this channel, we talk about all of fandom, not just the positive aspects, not just the aspects that everybody likes. This is meant to be fandom in its entirety. All of it. The light, the dark, the beautiful, the ugly, the accepted, the unaccepted, the questionable, the problematic, everything. And it's meant to hopefully be a place where we can come together and talk about it, which I hope we can do in the comments below. Please let me know how you feel about dark fic. What is your relationship with it? Does it depend on the type of darkness? Has a dark fic ever really helped you or ever hurt you? Please let me know everything down below. All thoughts are welcome. This is not about having a right or wrong thought process, but simply about having a discussion and exploring that there are different ways to think about these topics, and that something can be both helpful or hurtful. Potentially both at the same time. On a more upbeat question, do you like themed weeks? Do we need more themed weeks? If so, what theme should we have? I like themes. I, as always, appreciate all of you, and I love fandom, and I love fics. All types of fics, and this has rapidly become one of my favorite things to do on this channel, so I'm very much looking forward to next week, and I hope many of you will still be there to join me next week. If you haven't already, and this for some reason inspired you to, please do subscribe and hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. There are, as always, more vids coming soon, and until then, let's get to that outro. Bye-bye.
This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Special thanks to all of my patrons, names on the side, for helping to make these videos possible. There are, as always, more videos coming soon, so stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.